welcome to the How to Spark Success podcast series. I'm your host, Liz Hamlet, and I'm founder of Spark Succeed. I'm also a success coach and business mentor. And this is the podcast series where I have conversations with smart and savvy business owners and people doing amazing things around the globe. And I've got a fantastic guest here for you today. So my guest today is an author of award-winning book, How to Be a Virtual Assistant. She's an expert business mentor, and she's now launching her second book, which is the 20% Rule, which is out now, and I'm really excited to hear a bit more about it. So welcome to Catherine Gladwyn. Hi Catherine, how are you?
I am really well. Thank you so much for having me. It's a delight. So thank you. That was a lovely introduction as well. We just missed off bestseller with the first book.
Oh yes, bestseller. Yes, well. That's most important.
Yeah.
And I know I've been seeing a lot about your new book, so I'm really excited to hear a bit more about that. So do you want to tell us a bit more about, what you're doing now and your journey, perhaps, what brought you to what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been quite a fun journey, really. I had a brain tumour in 2012, and then again in 2014 it came back, and with the surgery and radiotherapy meant that my pituitary gland, which is where the tumour was in my brain, stopped functioning. And as I'm sure your listeners know, the pituitary gland controls our hormones, and once hormones go a little bit haywire, our whole days go haywire, our whole life goes haywire. And so I lost a few hormones. I developed something called Addison's disease, and it got increasingly difficult to get to work, let alone do a 9 to 5 in an office that was stressful with no ventilation and a team of people that were largely very annoying. So it was very difficult. It was getting to the point where I was starting to think, do you know what, I can't work anymore. But I didn't want to give up work. I'm like you, Liz. I have to keep busy. I like to be busy, and I'd go mad if I wasn't doing something. So I'd always been a PA and an admin manager. I'd started off as a secretary, if you remember that word, secretary. Don't tend to see that anymore, do we? So I looked at the possibility of doing PA work at home. And as your audience might know, that's a virtual assistant. So I became a virtual assistant, and I still do virtual assistant work now. I think it's important for me to continue doing that because I love it so much, and I focus on email marketing. But I'd always built my business kind of knowing in the background that something could happen again, that the tumour might come back, because I grow them quite fast. I'm like a little greenhouse. It's brilliant conditions for them. And the Addison's disease, with many other things, comes fatigue. So there are times when I sometimes have to spend the day in bed, working from bed. I hate to admit that in public, but that's just what my body has to do. So I'd always kind of known that there may come a time where the business might have to take a back seat to my health, but there was absolutely no way I was going back to the corporate world. I was not going back to being an employee, not just for my benefit, but for the people that might have employed me as well. I'd be hell, absolute hell now. So I'd always built my business knowing that. And then in October last year, which is October 2019, I had to have my third tumour out. The third tumour had grown. It was growing very fast. I had to go in. The surgeon said, you've got to come in imminently. So I had 4 weeks to get my business ready, have the surgery, and take 4 months off, doing absolutely nothing. I mean, for the first month, I couldn't even sit up in bed without my partner pushing me up. And I was able to put everything into practice that I'd developed over the last few years to ensure my business was what the tagline is in my new book: safe, sustainable, and profitable. So during that 4 months, during that period, and just focusing on getting better, I had no loss of income at all. I'd built my business to enable me to keep going even when I couldn't. Yeah. So I've now put all of that into a book. But that was my journey. That was why I am now. I'm now a business mentor as well, like you, Liz. And I use the advice, or I use what I've developed in my own business to help other people ensure that their business is safe, sustainable, and profitable.
And sort of that element, you know, because that's such a you know, crazy journey through, you know, health issues and sort of leaving the corporate life. And, you know, how have you managed to sustain the balance? Because, you know, running a business, you know, having your health operations and different things, writing a book at the same time, how have you managed to sort of sustain work-life balance, or have you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there are days when sometimes I have to spend 3 days in bed because it gets that bad. So what I do is I make sure I've got lots of me time in my calendar and in my diary. I've got an app blocker, something as simple as that. So my apps don't come on until 7 a.m. They go off at 8 p.m. They also go off between 12 and 2, so I can have a proper lunch. I only do one call a day. So today we're recording this and nothing else was in my diary, because I find talking quite exhausting because you have to think quite a lot as well. So I do carefully manage my days, and that comes with trial and error, doesn't it? You know, there have been days where I've done 2 power hours in a day with my clients, and then I am physically drained. I'm just completely drained. So that taught me that I can only do one. And one of my mottos is, it's your business, your rules. So you do what you want to do. And also another thing that I put on LinkedIn today is that, you know, if you're selling something quite a lot, up the price, and then you can do things less. So yeah, it is about finding a balance and how often you want to do something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I really liked, you know, we were talking about that earlier. I really liked your post today. It was really snappy. And it was saying, you know, if you're super busy, you know, some of the things you can do is sort of, one of the things is up your price. And I think that's really key, you know, rather than trying to like cram more in or working longer hours, you know, you're in demand. And also looking at other things like automation that we can, you know, we can talk about later. So what do you think for you in your sort of busy work life has been the most important factor in your success?
Well, the most important factor for me is keeping an eye on the prize. So knowing what I want to achieve and keeping my mind focused on that, and getting rid of anything that doesn't get me towards that goal. Because that can mean overwhelm, can't it? You see this, you know, this latest 5-day challenge that everybody's raving about. Oh my God, I need to sign up for it because that's definitely going to make me a 10K a month business owner or a multimillionaire. But you've got to stop. Does this get me to where I want to go? Yeah, okay, this 5-day challenge is going to teach me how to rocket with Instagram, but do I need Instagram? Do I need to be doing that? Instead, I stay focused. I still get those things come into my head thinking, oh, I need to change that, I don't know, that product listing on my website. But no, do I need to do that today? Can I do that tomorrow? Or can somebody else do it for me? So it's thinking about things like that. So there's 2 things I say to myself. Does it really need doing now? And can someone else do it? Because often somebody else can.
Exactly, because that's so important. You talked about outsourcing, but one of my previous podcast guests, Jules Baker, who's a MasterChef winner, and he now runs a charcuterie business that's going from sort of strength to strength. And he said, you know, when they were busy, as soon as it went into lockdown, the 2 co-owners got pulled in because of, you know, all the restrictions to basically slicing meat. And he was saying, you know, is this the best use of our time? You know, really, we need to be focusing on that sort of business development side of things. So I think, you know, that's really important, and it can be so tempting. You know, I have a lot of conversations with clients that have got that sort of, you know, the really must-dos that are going to be really sort of strategic impacts. But when you talk to them, they're like, well, I've done, you know, I've tidied up my website and I've done, you know, all the nice things that they want to do, and they've avoided the sort of finance or strategy piece. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. And I've got this imaginary friend that gets mentioned throughout my book. It's Dave down the chippy. And I always say to, you know, I run a couple of memberships, and people will come on and go, somebody's just told me that if you do X, Y, and Z, then this will happen. And I'm like, well, and if you just think about whether Dave down the chippy said that to you, it often makes you think, yeah, that's probably not true. It's probably not relevant to my business. And because there's an expert everywhere, isn't there? And I put expert in inverted commas there. But yeah, sometimes you just got to block out the noise. Another one of my sayings is, don't let anybody else dictate your feast. So ignore a lot of the noise around you and just focus on your own path and your own goals to get rid of that overwhelm.
That's really key. And I really liked your idea about that app blocker. And I was like, wow, I really need that, because, it's so tempting as a business owner. You think I've got to be on all the platforms, I've got to be really active and sort of posting all these stories and, really active. But, it's exhausting, with or without a health, health concern. It can be so draining. So
absolutely. And I didn't realize how draining it was until I came out of surgery and I couldn't even look at my phone. I couldn't even look at social media. My daughter and my partner, my daughter was at home at the time after my surgery, and they would play the Switch, the Nintendo Switch. And I couldn't even be in the room when that was on. It was too hectic for me. And now it kind of, even though it's like 6 months, I don't know, longer than that on, I've lost track of the time because of this lockdown. But even though we're that much further on, I'm still well aware of how draining those things were on my brain at that time. So still kind of think, do you know what, I'm a bit tired, so the phone is going off. It's going. It can disappear. Nothing's urgent, is it?
No, and I think, that's shiny object syndrome, like where, if I just like tidy it, realign that thing on my website, then I'm going to suddenly get all these, hundreds of extra sales, or, if I do this. And I think, it is exhausting, and you get that sort of comparisonitis, which is another one of my podcast guests talks about in her book, Be Brilliant. But, it can be really tempting. So I think that's an excellent tip. So have you got any other success habits, on a day or weekly basis? What would you say your success habits are?
Yeah, well, kind of going back to the what I said a minute ago, is just not letting anyone else dictate your feast. When I wrote my first book, I had quite a bit of trolling from somebody online, and it got quite nasty. And they were in the same arena as me. They didn't write a book like I had. They had a course. And I guess they felt that I was competition. And initially it was like, wow, what's going on? How has this happened? You haven't written a book. I'm not copying your course. This is coming from me, But then I thought, hang on a minute, I'm obviously doing something right. If this has got somebody's backup, I'm doing something right. And it fueled me. I guess I'm 5 foot tall. I'm not very big at all. And I suppose I've got that small person syndrome, that it just fires me up. So, and from that day forward, I thought, you are not dictating what I do with my life. So don't let the fear of what other people might think, because we're not mind readers. We don't know what other people might be thinking, and we also don't know what's going on in their lives. So don't let the fear of what other people might think stop you from going forward. It's you are the most important person.
And I think, the people that are doing the most impactful things are doing things differently, are pushing the boundaries. And, like you say, you could take that one way of like, oh gosh, it's, personal attack. Or you could take it, wow, I've obviously done something really good here. It's made someone quite nervous about their offering. And, that, I think, we talked a bit about sort of supporting each other and sort of business owners. And I think, that's key. You can look at other business owners as your competition, or you can look at them as sort of ways to collaborate and ways to sort of improve, and continuously improve and look at what each other are doing. So I think that's great.
Because when I wrote the first book, How to Be a Virtual Assistant, that was all I was doing, was the virtual assistant business. And a few people, the person that helped me write the blurb for it actually said to me, why are you writing this? Why are you training the competition? And I said, because I love what I do and I want the right people out there. I don't just want anybody to come along and think, I'm going to be a virtual assistant and then muck it up and then ruin it for all of us. But also, I also believe strongly that we should all have a lovely working life. We really shouldn't just work. There's no definition of work that says it's life limiting and stressful. So create a nice working life, because we all deserve it.
Exactly. And that leads really nicely into my next question for you, which is, if you could sort of start all over again, what would you do differently in your career?
Well, do you know what? You posed this question. You said that this question was coming up anyway, so it gave me time to think about it, and I can't think of anything. There is nothing that I would change, because I can't think of any major errors that I've made, or anything like that. I mean, I do have memory problems because of the tumours. Somebody might be watching or listening to this and thinking, hang on a minute, she did this. So I'm not quite sure, but I cannot think of anything that's gone majorly wrong. But even if it did, it makes you stop and think, okay, probably need to do that a bit differently next time. Maybe I shouldn't get into so many arguments online. That's something I do. I can't out myself. I can't walk away from people if they get stupid. So that's probably something I need to stop wasting my energy on.
Well, certainly when your apps are blocking, at least you've got a few less hours in the day.
Sometimes the app blocker comes on as I'm mid-argument. I think, oh, I've not finished.
Oh, mate, that's just your husband just turning off.
Yeah,
partner just turning off.
Turning the Wi-Fi.
Oh, that's amazing. So, I'm sure you, in writing your books and, the work you're doing, you have had a lot of really good advice. But what would you say has been the best advice that you've received about sort of becoming successful and sparking success?
I think one of the biggest things actually came from a friend of mine. She's not in business. She works for the local newspaper. She's in sales, absolutely brilliant at what she does. But she said to me one time, you never have to explain yourself to anyone. And I really like that. And I think that comes in handy when, you're asked to drop your rates, or you're asked if you can do a special deal, or you're asked why your price is this. Can you do this? Can I pick your brains? Things like that. And the answer is no. And then just pause. And once you pause, the other person fills the void. They fill the gap. And then in that pause, say to yourself, I never have to explain myself to anyone. It's a no. And I think that has really helped, because it is so easy when you're starting in business, or maybe you've lost some clients and you've perhaps got, this introduction to somebody else, and you think, I need the money, but they want to pay me less. Don't undervalue yourself. Just say no, and then that's it. Don't explain yourself. So that sticks with me.
That's excellent, because it can be so tempting if someone sort of asks for a discount to just say, well, maybe this one time. But it's so important, especially now in these current sort of economy, that you shouldn't, why should we all be giving huge discounts? We're all sort of making sure that we can get by. But I think that's fantastic, and not to explain. I think that pause is so effective.
Absolutely, isn't it just? And when you do it a few times and the other person starts talking, you think, yes, it does work.
And a good strategy, especially if you're someone that's very chatty like myself, but you learn, as as being a mentor, just how impactful it is to just pause, ask a question and pause, and give the opportunity to the client or the other person to sort of fill in that gap and provide some information. So I think that's
absolutely
fantastic. So do you want to just do a quick overview of your book and tell the listeners where they can find out a bit more, where they can look to buy it, because it is out now?
It is. It went live on Amazon this morning. So I don't know whether you'll be showing but I'm just
we've got one video on YouTube
in the camera as well. So it's the 20% rule. My name's Catherine Gladwyn, and it is live on Amazon today on paperback. It'll be live in a couple of days. It will certainly be live when this goes live on Kindle, but it's also available on my website, which is catherinegladwyn.co.uk. And the book is exactly as the tagline says. It's how to ensure your small business is safe, sustainable and profitable. And it gives tried and tested tips and what I've done along my business journey to ensure that my business was in that position. And as I explained at the beginning of the podcast, I got through the surgery and the 4 months off. It was supposed to be 3 months off, so I had to add an extra month at the end, quite late on as well. So things did continue there, and I was fine through the major part of the pandemic. I mean, we're still in it at the moment. We're only just out of lockdown, but I was absolutely fine through that as well. So I've proved that my plans do work, and I list those in my book. And my vocabulary isn't massive, so it's not full of business jargon. It's not full of long words. It's had some wonderful reviews. I'm going to read one of them actually. It's somebody's put, an absolute must to add to your collection. In fact, don't bother with the collection. You won't need anything else once you've read this and actioned Catherine's advice. And somebody else, this is the book I wish I'd read at the start of my business journey, and yet it still makes so much sense to me almost 9 years into being a business owner. Now, both of those people bought the book before I gave them a copy. And so that the reviews were genuine. They didn't have to give a nice review. So it wasn't like a case of, you can have a free book and then you write something nice. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's fair. It's also not in Amazon's guidelines. So those reviews were wonderful, and they're included in the book as well. So it's very exciting. I've sold over 100 copies already on pre-order, but didn't really think that through, because I've now got to print all the postage labels for it. So I need a VA.
Well, printer ink is at a premium at the moment.
I know, and I know mine is running out of cyan, and for some reason it doesn't want to print black and white if it hasn't got its cyan. It's a right little diva, my printer. They got one job and they can't seem to do it properly, can they? The number of times it's doing, I want to take it down the tip.
Well, I'm going to be checking out Amazon or Kindle after we get off this call, because, it sounds really interesting. I think, the fact that you're an embodiment of, this method that works, not many people could say that they could take 4 months off their business and not really see, any impact in income. So I think that's fantastic. So, Catherine, it's been an absolute delight to hear a bit more about your success secrets, and perhaps we'll have you on when you've written your 3rd book.
Oh God, yeah.
Have a rest first.
I'd love to. Yeah, I'm going to have a break for a little while. No, thank you so much, and thank you for your audience listening as well. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll make sure everything's tagged in the show notes and on my posts as well, so that's fantastic. And for the listeners, and Catherine as well, why not join me for the next episodes? I've got an absolute amazing guest yet again. I'll be joined by Laura Hamilton, who many of you will know, the TV presenter from A Place in the Sun. She's a travel and property expert, and also a business owner, because she owns Lord Roberts on the Green, which is an amazing pub that I'm desperate to get to, which has the amazing cakes and food, and they do barbecues. It just looks amazing and really pretty. So join me for that. And not only that, she's also a pilot in training. If she's not busy enough. So there's one thing about my guests: we love keeping busy. So if you want to spark your success, make sure you keep yourself busy. And if you've been inspired by Catherine's story and you would like to spark your own success, you can book in a call with me at sparksucceed.co.uk. So thanks again, Catherine, for joining me and having us as your one call today.
Not at all. Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you. I look forward to the next one as well. Laura Hamilton. Yes. Brilliant.
Yeah. Amazing. So thanks so much, Catherine, and take care.
Thank you. Bye.